Have you ever felt like you were invisible in your own family? Not ignored in passing, but truly unseen. Like the air is thick with noise and laughter, yet when it comes to you, it's as if you don't exist. That's how I felt that night, and I'll never forget it. The whole school gym had been transformed into a celebration hall. Colorful banners dangled from the rafters, champions of the state, with the school's mascot painted in bold red and gold. The bleachers were packed, shoulder to shoulder, parents waving signs with their kids' names scrawled in glitter. You could smell nachos and melted cheese from the snack counter, mixed with the sharp scent of floor polish that clung to the gym floor. There was a hum in the air, the kind of hum you only feel when a crowd shares one heartbeat. I walked in holding Jaden's hand. He's 13, tall, but still a boy in the way he clung to me. His fingers were warm and restless, tapping against my palm. He kept craning his neck to see over taller people, his sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. He whispered, "Mom, look at all of this. It's like the NBA." His eyes were alive with sparkles, the way only a kid's can be when they're part of something bigger than themselves. I wanted to hold on to that sparkle. I wanted to pretend the world was simple, just a gym, a team, a victory. But reality hit fast. There was a seating chart, rows labeled with laminated signs. The first 3 rows, right up against the stage, had crisp white cards taped to the backs of chairs, parents of the starting 5. I scanned them quickly, and of course there it was. Maya's name, bold letters, front and center, my sister, my mother's golden child. Next to her, another card, Coach Thomas Gray, her new husband, the man everyone adored. Where was my name? Nowhere. An usher, maybe a senior volunteer in a shiny red polo, approached me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He pointed toward the far back. "Single parents and alternates are seated over there." The words were polite, rehearsed, but each one cut like paper. Single parents. That label slapped me harder than I expected. Jaden frowned. "Yo, why are we back there?" His voice was soft, but I felt the weight in it. Kids know. They always know. I forced a smile. "It's fine, sweetheart. We'll see everything just as well from here." I squeezed his hand too tightly, trying to convince myself as much as him. But when we sat down, I couldn't shake it. The back row against the wall. The folding chairs were metal, cold against my skin. From here, the stage felt miles away. The laughter up front was a different world. Sparkling dresses, shiny shoes, camera flashes. Every time I lifted my eyes, I saw Maya. She looked perfect, of course. Her dark hair swept into soft curls, diamond earrings catching the gym lights, a dress that screamed sophistication while the rest of us wore jeans or simple blouses. She leaned into Thomas, whispering something that made her laugh. A laugh that wasn't just sound, it was performance. It carried, loud and clear, like she wanted me to hear it. And maybe I did. Because each time her eyes swept the crowd, they landed on me, and that smirk, subtle, practiced, curled at the corner of her lips. Have you ever been laughed at without words? That's what her smirk did. The ceremony began. The announcer's voice boomed, echoing across the gym. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate our champions!" the crowd roared. Balloons bounced against the ceiling. Cheerleaders clapped in rhythm, their pom-poms flashing. The team ran out in their jerseys, medals jangling like wind chimes, faces lit with triumph. The crowd leapt to its feet. Phones shot into the air, capturing every second. I clapped too because that's what you do. But my hands felt heavy, my smile stiff. Have you ever smiled so hard your cheeks hurt? Not because you're happy, but because you're hiding? The boys lined up on stage, the announcer calling each by name. Parents screamed in pride. Maya screamed the loudest, her voice slicing through the crowd like a siren. "That's my boy!" she yelled, standing up, waving. Everyone looked at her with admiration, nodding at her perfect picture. Meanwhile, I stayed seated. I whispered Jaden's name under my breath, barely audible. I didn't want to draw attention. I didn't want to remind the crowd I existed. Flashback, like a sudden sting. Years earlier, when Jaden was 6, I took him to his first soccer practice. I remember the other moms sitting in collapsible camp chairs, sipping from iced coffee cups, chatting with each other like lifelong friends. They wore matching t-shirts with their kids' names ironed on the back. And me? I had a thrift store blanket spread out on the grass, one lukewarm water bottle, and silence. No one sat next to me. No one looked at me. That same ache returned tonight, sharper than ever. The announcer introduced Thomas. "Let's welcome the coach who led our team to glory. Coach Gray!" The crowd exploded. Stomping feet, clapping hands, whistles. He strode up to the podium with the swagger of a man who believed every cheer belonged to him. He raised his arms like a champion, even though he hadn't played a single second. His speech poured out, smooth and rehearsed. Words like teamwork, dedication, family values. But to me, it wasn't about the boys. It was about him, about Maya, about their perfect little picture. From the back row, I sank lower. My stomach knotted, my jaw clenched. Have you ever been so full of feelings you couldn't swallow them down? That was me. I wanted to vanish. Jaden tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, why are we back here? Don't they know you're my mom?" His eyes, wide, brown, innocent, searched for an answer I didn't have. I brushed his hair back. "It doesn't matter where we sit. What matters is you." My voice cracked on you because deep down, I knew it did matter. Seats mattered, placement mattered, people noticed. And the message was loud. We weren't worth the front row. I bit my lip. I promised myself I wouldn't let them see me break. I wouldn't give Maya the satisfaction. But inside, it burned hotter than fire. And yet, even through that pain, there was Jaden. He clapped the hardest when his teammates waved. He shouted their names, his voice carrying with joy. Watching him, I thought, maybe I don't need the front row to matter. Maybe the world can push me into the shadows. But if my sun shines, I can survive it. Still. Have you ever been pushed so far into the shadows you wondered what would happen if you finally stepped into the light? That's where I was that night, at the back row, hiding, hurting. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the spotlight was about to swing. And when it did, it wouldn't just land on Jaden. It would expose everything. You know that moment when a spotlight hits, but it's not yours? When the whole room seems to tilt towards someone else, and you're left sitting in the shadows, shrinking smaller and smaller? That's what it felt like for me. The applause for Thomas, the coach, my sister's husband, rolled on like thunder. He raised his hands, soaking in every clap, every cheer, as if he'd scored the winning basket himself. His voice boomed through the mic. This victory is about more than just basketball. It's about unity. It's about family. Family, that word. It didn't just echo through the gym, it stabbed. And then Maya stood up. She never missed a chance to shine, not when an audience was watching. Her sequined dress shimmered under the gym lights. She wrapped an arm around Thomas, leaned into the mic he held, and said, clear enough for everyone to hear, clear enough to pierce right through me, "At least my family is complete." Do you hear that? Can you feel it? That burn in your chest when someone reduces your whole life, your struggles, your worth into one cruel sentence? The crowd laughed. Not everyone, but enough. Enough for me to hear it echoing off the bleachers. A few chuckles in the front, a murmur down the side aisles, a hand covering a smirk. Even the cheerleaders, still holding their pom-poms, glanced at each other with raised brows. I froze. Jaden turned toward me, his face tight. "Mom!" His voice cracked on the word. He didn't even finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I knew what he wanted to say. Why would she say that? Why here? Why us? I swallowed hard. My throat was dry like sandpaper, my palms cold. I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Don't break. Not in front of him." That was all I kept repeating in my head. Maya's eyes locked on mine across the gym. She tilted her chin, lips curving into a smile that wasn't a smile. It wasn't joy, it was triumph. She wanted me to feel small, to remind me, in front of everyone, that she had what I didn't, a husband, a complete family. And I sat there, in that back row, burning. Have you ever had a memory hit you so hard you almost forget where you are? A flashback slammed into me. Years ago, when Jaden was still a baby, I stood in my mother's kitchen with him on my hip. Maya walked in, flashing a new engagement ring. Mom gasped, hugged her, kissed her cheek. Then Mom turned to me, her eyes sliding past Jaden, and said, "Maybe one day you'll get it right." I laughed it off then, but inside I shattered. That same feeling rushed through me now, stronger, crueler. I blinked and was back in the gym, the sting of that kitchen still alive in my chest. Jaden's hand clenched mine. His knuckles went white. He whispered, "Why does she always do this?" I didn't have an answer, so I did what I've always done. Stayed silent. I looked down at the scuffed floor, at the reflection of the bright lights shimmering on the polished wood. My silence felt heavy, but it was safer than speaking. Because if I spoke, my voice would shake. The mood in the gym shifted. I could feel it, like a current of energy buzzing around me. People leaned in, whispering, trading glances. A few parents looked back at me, quick, sharp looks, pity, judgment, amusement. Each one cut like glass. That's when the music changed. The band played a loud, triumphant tune, brass and drums clashing. The crowd cheered again, trying to move past the moment, but I couldn't. Not when Maya's words were still hanging in the air like smoke. Do you know that sound of laughter that doesn't fade? The kind that stays lodged in your head even after it's gone? That's what I heard, over and over. At least my family is complete. I looked at Jaden. He wasn't clapping anymore. His face was red, his jaw set. He was breathing fast, too fast. A boy of 13, forced to carry the weight of humiliation he didn't deserve. And I thought, this is it. This is the crack. This is where something has to give. Because you can endure so much. You can bite your tongue, keep your head down, survive the whispers. But when they target your child, when their cruelty splashes onto the one person you love most, that's when silence becomes unbearable. I knew then, tonight wouldn't end quietly. There's a silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels loud. It presses on your ears until even the sound of your own heartbeat feels like a drum. That's what wrapped around me after Maya's words. I stayed seated, my body stiff, my lips pressed into a line so tight they ached. Every part of me wanted to disappear, but I couldn't because all those eyes found me. Have you ever felt the weight of 100 stares? Some curious, some pitying, some cruel? That's what it was. People didn't need to whisper anymore. Their glances said it all. That's the sister, the single mother, the one who couldn't measure up. I stared straight ahead, willing myself not to move. My palms were damp against my knees. My shoulders were heavy, like sandbags pulling me down. Jaden shifted in his chair beside me. He wasn't shrinking like I was. He was swelling. His back straightened, his jaw clenched. His eyes darted around, catching every snicker, every sideways smirk, every raised brow. He saw it all. And then he turned to me, his voice low, trembling. "Why aren't you saying anything?" How do you answer that? How do you explain years of conditioning? That sometimes silence feels safer than fighting? That when you've been told over and over your voice doesn't matter, you learn to bite it back? I didn't know what to tell him, so I just shook my head. Not here, Jaden. Not now. But I could see it in his eyes. He didn't believe me. He didn't accept it. He scanned the gym again, watching the laughter ripple, the whispers spread like fire. Have you ever felt powerless and yet known someone else was about to do what you couldn't? That's the tension that filled the space between us. I kept my eyes fixed on the stage. Thomas was still talking, his speech flowing like honey, words about integrity, discipline, role models. Each phrase hit me like an insult. Integrity? Role model? He was the man who turned his back on me years ago when I needed help most. He was the man who married Maya and played father to her kids, while mine, my Jaden, was treated like an afterthought. And yet, here he was, applauded, worshipped. My teeth dug into my tongue. The taste of iron filled my mouth, but I stayed silent. Because silence was survival. Then a sound broke through, laughter, sharp and unkind, from somewhere in the bleachers. I didn't even need to look. I knew it was about me, about Jaden, about us. Jaden's hand balled into a fist on his thigh, his face flushed, a storm building behind his eyes. And I thought, he's not going to let this slide. For 12 years, I had carried it. The snide remarks, the comparisons, the half smiles that weren't smiles. I carried them quietly, the way women do when they think they don't have a choice. But my son, he had grown up watching it, and he wasn't me. I felt the shift in him. The way he leaned forward, eyes narrowing on the stage. The way his chest rose and fell faster, sharper. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Silence wouldn't save us this time. Have you ever been at the edge of an eruption? The air thick, the ground trembling, everyone oblivious until the first crack splits the surface? That's what it felt like. I closed my eyes, just for a second, and a memory crashed in. Me, cradling Jaden at 3 years old, after his father walked out, his tiny body pressed against mine, his sobs soaking my shirt. I whispered then, "It's just us, but we're enough." Back in the gym, I opened my eyes to see him now, taller, stronger, no longer crying, but burning. And I thought, maybe enough isn't staying silent anymore. Maybe enough means fighting back, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My fear chained me down. That's when I felt his hand slip from mine, small but steady, determined. He stood just a little, his body tense, his eyes locked on the stage. I whispered, panic in my chest, "Jaden, please, not now." He didn't answer. The gym felt like it was holding its breath. The lights glared, the banners swayed, the crowd buzzed with whispers. And in the middle of it all, my son sat straighter than I'd ever seen him. Have you ever known, with absolute certainty, that a storm was about to break? That was me. Because after 12 years of swallowing the pain, tonight the truth was going to erupt, and it wouldn't come from me. Have you ever watched a 12-second moment stretch into forever? The kind of forever where your breath won't move and the floor feels like it might slide out from under you? That's what happened when Jaden stood up. It wasn't dramatic at first. No chair scraped, no big announcement. He just rose, quietly. His shoulders squared, like someone had reached inside him and clicked a hidden switch from boy to something else. The gym lights washed his face a hard gold. I grabbed for his sleeve and caught air. "Jaden." My voice was barely a thread. He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the stage, on the microphone gleaming under Thomas's hand, on the big LED screen behind the podium still playing a loop of highlight reels, dunks, fast breaks, confetti. The soundtrack pounded, bass thick enough to rattle the metal of our back row chairs. The band blared a triumphant riff that seemed to shout, "We won! We're perfect! Clap louder." Jaden took one step into the aisle, then another. I could see the small tremor in his fingers. People were standing along the edges, crowding the walkway with programs and purses and knees. He moved through them without pushing, but without pausing either. It was like the crowd realized, a breath too late, that a current was flowing and they'd better not stand in its path. "Sweetheart, wait." I was on my feet now, but my legs felt slow, like I was wading through syrup. My hand brushed the back of his jersey, the fabric warm from his skin, the stitched letters rough under my fingertips, and then he slipped free. He didn't run. He didn't need to. Every step had weight, intent. People started to turn, one face at a time, like flowers swiveling toward the sun. Conversations thinned, laughter frayed. A whispered, "Is that Dana's kid?" threaded the air. My heart thudded so loud I swear the bleachers heard it. On stage, Thomas was still talking. And to our parents who model integrity and sacrifice, who show our young men what a complete family looks like. That last word, complete, hit Jaden mid-aisle. He stopped, for 1 second. The muscle in his jaw jumped. Then he started again, faster now, the aisle narrowing as more bodies leaned in to watch. I wanted to run to him, to pull him back into the safety of the shadows, but I couldn't. Something in me knew this wasn't my moment to stop. This was his. And somehow, some part of me, shaking, terrified, trusted him. Up front, a volunteer tried to block his way with a gentle palm. "Honey, you need to—" "I need the mic." Jaden's voice was steady, not loud, but steady like a line you can follow in a storm. The volunteer blinked, startled by the tone, and glanced toward the stage. Thomas frowned, new lines carving into his forehead. The principal leaned toward a teacher, confused. Maya rose slightly out of her seat, the sequins on her dress throwing shards of light across the floor. Her smile was gone. Jaden reached the stairs, 2 steps 4, 8. His sneakers tapped wood, a simple metronome in the wall of noise. He walked straight toward Thomas like he'd practiced it, like the floor had been measured for this very path. Have you ever seen your child look so much like the truth that it almost hurts to see him? That's what it felt like. Thomas's hand hovered, then clenched the mic. Young man," he said, and you could hear the smile being stapled onto his voice. "We'll save comments for... I won't take long." Jaden didn't reach for the mic, not yet. He looked past it, at the LED screen, at the remote on the podium with 3 rubber buttons, back, pause, next. "Can you put the screen on input 2? The room didn't catch up right away. There was an odd little pause, like the gym itself tilted its head. "Input 2, Thomas echoed. "The HDMI. Jaden's eyes flicked to the AV table where 2 students in headsets sat behind a laptop and a tangle of cables. It's labeled, "Just Switch." One of the AV kids looked at the other. They shrugged, palms up, teens trying not to get yelled at. The principal started forward. Maya's face cooled a full 10 degrees. This is where my breath finally moved. "Jaden," I called, somehow both whisper and plea. He turned his head just enough to find me in the sea of faces, and in his eyes I saw it. Not anger. Not the reckless spark of a kid picking a fight. I saw clarity, a decision already made. Have you ever realized your job isn't to protect anymore, but to witness? That's what hit me. It stunned me still. "Son." Thomas tried again, voice firmer now. "This isn't the..." The band stopped. Not because anyone told them to, they just stopped. The drumbeat fell silent, cymbals stilled mid-shimmer. The quiet that followed wasn't real quiet. It was a charged hush, full of breath, shifting shoes, the creak of the big banner cords high up in the rafters, pattern interrupt. The gym felt it too. A cheerleader near the front lowered her pom-poms like they were suddenly heavy. An assistant coach scratched the back of his neck, eyes narrowed. A parent near me muttered, "What's going on?" Another said, "Who is that?" "That's my son," I said out loud. I didn't mean to. It just slipped out, soft but sure, and I felt my spine lengthen, vertebra by vertebra, like the words propped me upright. On stage, Thomas lifted the mic toward the crowd, searching for a joke that could reset the room. "Looks like we have a tech enthusiast." "Please," Jaden said. And the please was new, clean. "Let me speak." "Then switch the screen." Thomas's jaw tensed. He could refuse. He could have the principal escort Jaden down and make a speech about decorum and schedules, and this is not the time or place. But something in the room had shifted beyond the schedule. People weren't watching him anymore. They were watching the boy. Maya stepped forward, trying to catch Jaden's eye, trying to fold him into that old family network of glances and guilt. "Jaden," she said smoothly, "your mother can talk to us later, sweetheart. We're celebrating." He looked at her like she was a closed door. Then he turned back to the mic. Thomas yielded an inch, then another. He held the mic out, just enough that Jaden could take it if he dared. I saw the calculation in my son's eyes. Reach, speak, risk. He didn't reach. He leaned in, hands at his sides, and spoke into the cage of metal like it belonged to him. "Hello," he said. "I'm Jaden." The sound of his voice through the speakers startled me. It sounded older, not deep, but grounded, like it came from inside his feet. "I'll be quick," he said. "I know this is a party. I know this is about the team. I just need 30 seconds to say something true." No one moved, a cough somewhere, the buzz of the lights, the faint wheeze of the gym doors as someone arrived late and instantly froze. He looked straight ahead, not at Thomas, not at Maya, not at me. "A lot of you don't know me. I'm a bench kid. I didn't score any points this season. That's okay. I learned a lot watching." "You see things when you sit back." A murmur rippled. "Bench kid. Sit back." People were listening. "I've watched my mom get put in the back row." He didn't point. He didn't turn. He just said it and let the words land. "I've watched her be quiet when other people weren't kind. Tonight someone said, 'Complete family,' and everybody laughed." He didn't say who. He didn't have to. But I think complete means something else. A shiver ran through the room, not a cold shiver. The kind you get when you realize the ground is not what you thought. Jaden took a breath, then another. He was so still, the mic barely picked up a rustle. "I also watched other things, at the mall, online. I saved a few things because I didn't understand them." He turned his head finally to the AV table. "Now you can switch the screen." Someone's chair squeaked behind me. The AV kid reached for the laptop trackpad with a hand that shook. The LED screen flickered. Highlight reel stuttered to a still frame, then the overlay menu blinked on. Input 1, Input 2, Input 3. Big white boxes like doors. The cursor slid to Input 2, click, black for a breath. Then a plain desktop wallpaper, a folder labeled JV Tournament. Clips. Another labeled Receipts, and a third labeled Screenshots. The principal took a step forward. "We should—" "30 seconds, Jaden said. Not a plea, a boundary. Thomas's smile had fossilized. Maya's hand went to her necklace, turning the pendant around her finger like a bead on a rosary. "Open Screenshots," Jaden said gently. The AV kid clicked. Thumbnails popped up, tiny squares of text bubbles, email headers, calendar invites. Not chaos, organized, dated. Have you ever felt time thicken? Every click was a drumbeat. Every pixel felt like it might explode. "Scroll to the one from last Thursday," Jaden said. "The one with the subject line, 'Transfer confirmed.'" I hadn't known about any of this. Not the folder names. Not the path through them. It felt like discovering my son had built a secret map. and tonight he'd chosen to unfold it under stadium lights. My hand found the edge of my chair and gripped. "Jayden," Thomas said sharply into the mic, trying to retake control. "You don't know what you're doing. This is private information." Jayden finally looked at him. The look wasn't angry, it was clear. "Then you shouldn't email it from the team account." A gasp rippled, small but real. The AV kid clicked again. A screenshot filled the LED screen. Too fast to read, just a flash of subject lines and numbers, then vanished as the principal lunged toward the laptop. The AV kid's hand hovered, unsure whether to fight an adult. The room teetered on the edge of panic. The air smelled like hot wires and cologne. Somewhere, a toddler fussed and was shushed. My throat ached with words I didn't say. "Stop," I whispered, to no one and everyone. And then, as if the gym itself obeyed, everything paused. It wasn't a long pause. 2 seconds, 3. But in that pocket of stillness, a spotlight, one of the cheap portable ones set up for photos, tilted and swung, carving a white circle across the stage. It landed on Jayden, not on the screen, not on Thomas, on my son. He didn't flinch. He looked small in all that light, and somehow larger than anything it could hold. "Here's what I'm asking," he said, words crisp, edges clean. "Let me finish the 30 seconds. Then if I'm wrong, I'll go sit down. If I'm right, we switch the screen and let the truth speak. Tell me, what would you have done? If you were the coach, the principal, my sister with diamonds in your ears and a perfect picture to protect? Would you have yanked the mic? Called security? Smiled for the camera and hoped the moment passed?" No one moved. The spell of the spotlight held. Thomas lowered the mic a fraction. The principal stalled, palms lifted, smoothing the air. Maya's mouth was a hard line. Jayden took that inch and made it a door. He leaned closer to the mic again. "This is still a celebration. It can be. But celebrations mean more when they're honest." He exhaled, a soft sound swallowed by the speakers. "I'm ready to be honest." And I, standing in the back row, nails biting my palm, felt something inside me click into place. Pride, fear, exhaustion, love. All of it fused into one steady hum. "Let him." He stepped back half a pace, not retreating, making room. He raised one hand and pointed, not at a person, but at the space between the crowd and the truth. "Switch the screen," he said. The cursor moved, a final hover over the file name like a held breath. The room bent toward it, every spine, every eye, every doubt. Have you ever been so close to the moment that changes everything that you can taste the metal in the air? Have you ever felt a room inhale? One long, collective breath, right before it decides who it's going to be. Brave or silent? That's what the gym did when the cursor hovered over the file. The LED screen was a glass ocean, pale and waiting. The little arrow shook once, twice, then the click. Black for a heartbeat, then white, then text. I swear I could hear the pixels snap into place. A screenshot filled the screen, subject line big and bold at the top like a headline. "Transfer confirmed. Athletics booster account." Under it, a date stamp. Last Thursday, time 6:12 p.m. The sender, Athletics Finance at symbol. The recipient, T. Gray at the first line of the body. Per your request, $4,750 was transferred to Community Athletics Booster LLC event reimbursement. The numbers shone like metal under a flashlight. 4,750. Not a rounding error, not a pizza party. Someone near the front said, "Oh, just that." A soft little "oh" that carried, because the gym had gone so quiet it seemed to amplify small sounds. Next to me, a parent whispered, "Wait, what is this?" Another answered without meaning to, emails, receipts. The word spread like a rumor under the bleachers. On stage, Thomas's smile fell a fraction, like a curtain catching on a nail. The principal moved toward the AV table again, then stopped when the crowd's focus shifted as one. You could feel it. 200 people deciding that the truth, for once, would not be rushed off the stage. The cursor slid down the email, highlighting a note at the bottom. Please delete upon review. My stomach flipped. Delete upon review. Have you ever seen guilt spelled out that plainly? The next click zoomed in. The letters grew huge, black strokes on white. Please, delete, upon, review, people murmured. A dad in the row ahead of me said, my kid sold candy bars for that money. No one answered him. We all heard the math landing in his chest. Another click, back to the folder. Another file opened, a different screenshot. This one with a payment processor logo in the corner and a green check mark. Payout to CA Booster Events, $3,200. 00. Description: travel stipend, coaches and guests. The date: 3 days before a JV tournament out of town. Now there were sounds. The low growl of anger waking up, a chair leg scraping, the rustle of programs being folded with white-knuckle hands. He'd told us about integrity, about complete families. Meanwhile, the money that kids hustled for, car washes in the rain, bake sales on windy Saturdays, sponsorship letters written in shaky handwriting, had been siphoned off into a black box with his name tied to it by a thread of emails. A buzz of feedback squealed through the speakers, sharp, sudden, a metal shriek. The crowd flinched as one, pattern interrupted. The kind that makes your spine lift and your eyes lock harder on the thing you're not supposed to see. Turn it off, Maya said, too brightly, clapping her hands like she could tidy the air. This isn't part of the... A mother in the second row stood up, small but unshakable. No, she said, voice steady as a church bell. Leave it on. Heads turned. Others rose, one here, one there. Leave it. Let the boy finish. We paid for those buses. Every line was a fuse catching. My throat went tight. Jaden didn't look back at me. He simply nodded once at the AV table. The cursor moved again, deliberate, not rushed. Another email opened. This one was shorter. Trophy order. Vendor says we're behind on payment. Can we delay to Q2? A reply below, from Thomas's address. Delay. Priority is travel and appearance for next weekend. Travel and appearance. For whom? The words sat there like a dare. Enough, Thomas said into the mic, trying to laugh, failing. We're taking things wildly out of context. There are line items none of you understand, and it's ridiculous to... A father barked from the aisle. Then show the context. The gym answered with a rumble of agreement. And in that rumble, a memory snapped into me. The dollar jar Jaden kept on his desk last month, coins rattling every time he dropped in another quarter from walking dogs. For team warm-ups, he'd written on a sticky note. The ink had bled when a spill hit it. I dried the paper with a hairdryer so the words wouldn't blur away. We are not rich. We are careful. The careful hate being made fools of. Jaden lifted his chin. Input 2, file 4, he told the AV kid, calm, like a conductor. The screen flipped to a PDF invoice, Hotel Reserve. 3 suites, Riverside Lodge. Blocks of text, line items. Suite A, 2 adults, 1 child. Suite B, 2 adults. Suite C, 2 adults, 2 children. Each one marked paid, booster card. Dates matched the JV tournament weekend. A child, 2 children. The JV weekend had a strict policy. Players bunked with teammates. Families traveled separate and self-paid. Everyone knew that. Everyone had read the emails. A murmur turned into a ripple of, oh God, oh no. I watched the numbers climb. 1,189, 962, 1,423, total $3,574. Thomas lunged a half step, as if he could physically snatch the digits off the screen. Those rooms were for my assistants, he said, but there was a catch in the middle like a loose stone in a shoe. Your assistants don't have toddlers, the mother in row 2 said, not unkindly. A truth stated like weather. He opened his mouth, closed it. The cursor hovered over a small blue link at the bottom of the invoice. View guest names. No one breathed. The AV kid clicked. A warning popped up. Administrator view only, blocked. The gym exhaled again, half relief, half frustration. Jaden didn't flinch. Then open folder receipts. The photo with the timestamp 7:42 p.m. It popped open. A phone pic of a front desk counter. You could see a hand with a familiar championship ring resting beside a pen. A trifold brochure half visible in the frame. Riverside Lodge. Family weekends. The sign-in log was blurry until the cursor dragged a zoom box. The names sharpened one by one. On the second line, T. Gray. On the third, M. Gray. On the fourth, 2 names I didn't know. On the fifth, a last name I recognized from whispers I had chosen not to believe, the gym swallowed. 1,000 tiny muscles tightened at once. My hands shook, not with fear, with something older, anger that had nowhere to go for too long. It looked for an exit and found this screen. Thomas pressed the mic so close it popped. This is harassment of a public servant. You're a child. You stole private materials? Jaden finally turned to face him. You used a shared team drive. No heat, just fact. The passwords are taped to the office monitor. A low wave of disbelief rolled through the coaches on the sideline. One of them rubbed his forehead and stared at the floor. Another whispered, "Tom, man," and didn't finish. The principal tried to salvage the formality. We should adjourn for 10 minutes while we... No adjournment, a dad shouted. We've adjourned our paychecks to this program all year. Laughter bled into anger, then dried into resolve. The cursor slid again. Another screenshot filled the screen. Internal note, trophy payment delay, optics. Under it, we can spin a supply chain story if parents ask. The crowd made a sound I've only ever heard twice. Once at a funeral when a casket lowered, once at a delivery room when a newborn cried. It was the sound of a line being crossed and the room crossing with it. I felt tears burn the backs of my eyes. Not because I like trophies, I don't. But I know what kids feel when the thing they worked for doesn't show up. I know what my son feels when his mother sits in the back row. Enough, Maya snapped, voice cracking like thin glass. You don't get to turn a celebration into your pity parade. She pointed, not at me this time, but at Jaden. Put the microphone down, young man. The gym recoiled. A chorus of hey and whoa. And he's a kid rose at once. Jaden didn't speak. He turned back to the AV table and said, Open the email with the attachment. The one that starts with coach agreement. The subject line filled the screen. Coach appearance agreement, Riverside Lodge, family weekend. The attachment view flickered. Clause after clause scrolled in black type. Appearance fee, social posts, bring family for photos. The kicker was in the footer. Honorarium wired to Community Athletics, Booster LLC. A mother gasped like she'd been slapped. A father said very softly, So we paid him to bring his family to a hotel, to smile in pictures during a JV tournament weekend? No one answered him. The answer had already climbed onto the screen and sat there, unashamed. And that's when the hush changed from stunned to hot. A boy near the baseline muttered, We practiced in wet socks because the washer broke. And his teammate nodded like he wanted to set the screen on fire with his eyes. My pulse pounded in my throat. I thought about how many small yeses lead to a big wrong. Yes, use the card just this once. Yes, it's for morale. Yes, we'll fix the trophies later. Yes, it's okay if the single mom sits in the dark where the camera won't find her. Have you ever realized that the opposite of a big lie is 100 small truths lined up on a screen? Thomas tried one last pivot. He lifted both hands, palms out, preacher sincere. Parents, please. We can explain all of this if we... A voice cut through, clean as a whistle. Explain it now. The principal turned. The school treasurer, gray blazer, practical shoes, had come in through the side door. She'd been late. Now she was on time. Her eyes were hard with a math only she knew. Explain why a booster account paid an honorarium. He opened his mouth, shut it. You could see the calculations scramble, stone-stepping from denial to charm, to scold to threat. But the river had risen, and the stones were gone. Jaden took a small step back, as if giving the truth a little more room to breathe. His voice threaded into the mic once more, soft as a promise. We can stop here if you want, or we can scroll. The crowd voted without raising hands. Scroll, they breathed. A wave. He scrolled. Not to another number, to a reply from Thomas. Keep this between us. Parents get testy when they don't see immediate returns. A sound hit the gym, like wind catching a door and slamming it open. The mask was off now. You could feel the light change, as if the gym's old fluorescence had finally decided to show the dust in the air. I pressed my palm over my heart. It was racing and steady at the same time. Have you ever been afraid and proud in the same breath? That was me, proud of my son's spine, afraid of what came next. Because once truth starts moving, it doesn't stop at tidy. It runs through every lie that thought it could hide behind a podium and a smile. And just when I thought the room couldn't hold any more voltage, a sound I didn't expect sliced in from the edges, tinny, rapid, overlapping. Not from the speakers, from phones, from the hallway, from the world outside the gym doors, notifications, a dozen pings at once, then 20. Then a soft roar of chimes and buzzes as phones all over the bleachers lit up like a second sky. Heads bowed in unison, fingers flicked, eyes widened. I didn't know it yet, but people beyond this gym were watching. The screen in front of us was about to become a window, and once a window opens, the air changes. I looked at Jaden. He hadn't reached for the mic again. He didn't need to. The evidence was speaking. The parents were listening. The room had chosen. Have you ever felt a dam crack? Not break. Crack. The first fracture that tells you the river is coming. That's what this was. The emails, the invoices. The clause in a contract that dared to be seen. The gym had inhaled at the start. Now it exhaled. Hot, angry, clear. And the breath it blew out carried a message. We are not going back to applause. Hold on. Because I thought the worst had already happened, I was wrong. The worst and the best was about to arrive wearing Wi-Fi. Have you ever felt a room split into two worlds? What's on the stage and what's on the screens? That's what happened next. 1 second, the giant LED was the only light anyone cared about. The next, 1,000 smaller suns flared to life in people's hands. Phones lit up. Notifications rained down like summer hail. The gym became a sky full of rectangles. I didn't understand it at first. I thought it was just parents texting. A few pings, a buzz, a vibration against a wooden bench. Normal. But it kept building. A chorus of chimes, then the tinny echo of a video playing 3 rows back, then 2, then right behind me. A boy near the aisle whispered, "We're live," another answered. "Dude, thousands." Thousands? My stomach dropped. On stage, the screenshot of the email still glowed. The cursor hovered uncertain, like it was waiting to see who the gym wanted to be. Jaden had stepped back from the mic, giving the truth room to breathe. But now the room had a new oxygen source. The outside world had entered. "Check TikTok Live," someone hissed. "At Eastside Hoops fan is streaming." A different voice. No, Instagram has the better angle. Look." Front row. I looked down at my own phone. I hadn't touched it all night. My hands were shaking too hard to trust a screen. But even with the volume off, my lock screen bloomed with previews. Are you seeing this? Is that your school? OMG, Dana? People I hadn't heard from in months were suddenly knocking on the glass. Have you ever watched a small story burst its frame? That's what the live stream did. It tore the tape off the borders of our gym and turned our mess into everyone's event. A pack of students near the baseline had their arms raised, phones perched like periscopes. Their faces were lit ghost blue from below. One shouted, half crying, half laughing, 10,000? Bro, we're at 10! Another answered, it's on Reddit already. What the? And didn't finish because his mouth just stayed open. The comments flew so fast I could only catch a word here and there when someone tilted their screen at just the right angle. Scroll up. Receipts? Coach who? Show the email. Parents paid for that? Emojis poured like confetti none of us ordered. Eyes, sirens, fire. And then a pinprick of ice. Check his other family. It slid through the noise and found me. I don't know whose phone it was on, which feed, which app, but the phrase jumped from screen to screen like a spark on dry grass. On stage, Thomas leaned toward the principal, urgency boiling out of him now. Shut it down, he hissed, not bothering with the mic. But mics always hear the things people wish they hadn't said. The whisper came out as a breathy shut it down that rolled across the room and then out into the live stream, where comments grabbed it and threw it back with a laugh. Shut it down! El Mao too late. The principal tried for calm. He lifted both hands. Please, everyone. Let's remember this is a school function. A parent with a booster t-shirt lifted her phone and said, it was a school function when you took our money. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. The live stream heard her anyway. Hearts bloomed on her screen like a field of clover. The LED flickered. Another screenshot replaced the last one, a bank feed with the booster balance. Numbers dipping like a bad EKG. The comments surged. No way. I sold 200 candy bars for this same. My kid washed cars in the rain. Have you ever felt shame leave your body and turn into heat? Not the shame you deserve, the kind pressed onto you by people smiling. That heat rose in me. It rolled down the aisles. It gathered in the corners where mothers in plain jackets sat with their hands in their laps, where fathers in oil-stained caps leaned forward, where teenagers, suddenly older, stopped giggling and started watching like jurors. Then the moment that split the night. A new account appeared at the top of a dozen phones at once. I saw it pop into feeds like a ghost entering rooms through the walls. At Township Truths, no profile picture, no posts, until now. A text overlay across a blank background. You wanted context. And then a carousel. Photo 1, photo 2, photo 3. I didn't breathe. The first image. Thomas at a county fair, not ours. He was out of uniform, in a ball cap, one arm around a woman who wasn't my sister. Her smile was tired, tender. The other arm held a toddler with the same round cheeks as the boy who plays center on our junior varsity team. The date stamp sat in the corner like a witness from last month. The gym made a sound I can't spell. Shock has a shape. You can feel it push against your ribs. The second image, a little backyard birthday. A paper banner strung between two trees. Happy 4th. Thomas kneeling to light candles on a sheet cake. The same woman behind him, hand on his shoulder. Another child half hidden, older, camera shy. The chairs were cheap and plastic. The kind you only buy if parties like that are regular, normal. Not secret in the way of thrill, secret in the way of routine. The third image, a close-up of a hotel sign-in book. Different hotel than the one we saw on the LED, different weekend. The names again. One line for Thomas. One for the woman with the tired smile. 2 lines for the children. The pen strokes were unpracticed, the kind kids make when the countertop is too high. Phones tilted everywhere, gasps multiplied. The comments went feral. Coach got a whole other family? Not the complete family speech someone screen record this tag, the district tag, the news tag, your grandma. I didn't look at Maya. I couldn't. My vision tunneled. All I could see was Jaden on stage, his face still and pale in the LED glow. He didn't flinch. He didn't gloat. He just watched. The way you watch the truth arrive in boots, not slippers. Thomas lunged toward the AV table, this time with open anger, but a wall rose up without anyone planning it. Dad stepping sideways into his path, moms shifting purses and elbows, teens forming a line of phones raised like shields. No one touched him. They didn't have to. The room itself had arms now. "Who posted that?" the principal demanded, voice cracking. "Who is at Township Truths?" Laid over the live stream, text bloomed again. "Not the point." And then another sentence. "Protect the kids. Protect the kids." That ricocheted inside me. The words felt like they'd been written for my son and that backyard's children all at once. The gym lights felt too bright. The air felt too thin. A cheerleader sat down hard on the edge of the mat and put her head between her knees. A science teacher I knew only from parent nights whispered, "My God," like a prayer he'd never had to use before. "Turn it off," Maya said again, but the command sounded small, like wind against a closed window. She reached for Thomas as if to steady the picture they'd framed of themselves, but his arm didn't bend toward her. It hung by his side, heavy, caught. The live stream counts climbed. 12, 4K, 19, 8K, 32, 1K viewers. In the bottom corner of someone's phone, I glimpsed a red dot beside the word live, beating like a second heart. Comments stacked faster than anyone in that gym could read. But even without reading, we understood the rhythm. Shock, anger, jokes, links, calls to action. Tag the superintendent. "Where's the booster ledger? Protect the kids. Check the board minutes. Check his other family." The last line finished becoming a chant. Teenagers started saying it under their breath out of habit. Repeat what trends. And then adults took it and sharpened it, not as mockery, but as command. Check his other family. Not to humiliate, but to make sure there wasn't a fourth line in some other town's hotel log, another child whose name had been written too high up on a counter by a small hand. Have you ever felt the internet do something useful in real time? It's messy, it's loud, it's also relentless. A boy with braces yelled, "Comments are dropping addresses." Redact, read. Okay, they're redacting. Good. The anonymous account was quick. Anything too sharp got blurred within seconds. It wasn't a mob. It was a current, and for once it flowed toward protection, not gossip. Jaden cleared his throat into the mic, not to speak long, just to puncture the swirl. "Please don't go after the kids. This is about money and lies, not them." His voice didn't waver. In the live stream, a flood of hearts shot up like sparks. W-Kid, protect Jaden, protect all kids. The principal's face sagged, exhausted by a reality he hadn't planned for. The audience wasn't in the gym anymore. It was everywhere. His script had no page for everywhere. "Folks," he tried again, but the word collapsed. He looked at the treasurer. She shook her head once, slow, like there was no broom big enough for this. A local reporter's name flashed in a comment bubble on someone's phone, then a bigger outlet, then another. Tag, share, tag, share. The live stream crawled with account names I recognized from nightly news. A blue-check DM preview slid across someone's lock screen. Invitations to send footage. Would you have stayed? Would you have looked away? The gym didn't. Someone turned their phone outward so the kids behind them could read a comment thread. The words were simple. When an adult uses kids to hide a lie, the kids deserve the truth first. It hit me like a bell. You could feel the room agree without clapping. Agreement has a temperature, and the gym got warmer. Thomas finally spoke into the mic, voice stripped to wire. "This is defamation. Anyone reposting will hear from my attorney." 3 parents lifted their phones higher and said in 3 different corners of the room, "Say that again." He didn't. The live stream didn't care. It moved on. Another upload from At Township Truths, a short clip, shaky, taken from a distance weeks earlier. Thomas pushing a stroller through a park I didn't recognize. A tiny voice laughing. The caption, "You don't have to lie to be loved." I felt something unclench in me. Not relief, not yet, but something like it. An unclenching that said, this part isn't mine to carry anymore. The lie didn't start in my house. It just splashed onto us from the front row. Tonight, the splashback found its source. "Mom," Jaden said quietly, off mic now, just to me across a room of witnesses. I could read the word on his lips. I nodded. I didn't know what I was nodding to. Maybe to the fact that he had asked the internet to be better and it had for a minute. Maybe to the fact that we were past the point where silence looked like safety. The LED screen dimmed for a second, then brightened again as the AV kid adjusted settings none of us understood. Comments continued to roll. The gym felt like a lung, breathing in and out of the feed. Then the phrase we didn't know we needed floated up, typed by someone whose username I'll never remember. "Document, don't destroy." The room repeated it without speaking. "Document, don't destroy." Phones steadied, screens focused. No one rushed the stage. No one grabbed. We watched. We recorded. We let the truth accumulate. Have you ever watched a flood find its level? That's what the justice felt like. Messy, inevitable, seeking every low place a lie had carved. The coach looked smaller now, not because he had shrunk, but because the room had grown. His voice rattled in the mic, lost in the crosswind. Maya turned in place, searching for the old power of an appraising glance, the old weapon of a polished sentence. It wasn't here, not tonight. "Enough for now," Jaden said softly into the mic, like the host of a show no one meant to create, but everyone was suddenly watching. He nodded at the AV table. "Hold the screen." Then he looked up into the phone forest and said, "Thanks." Not to the trolls, not to the noise. To the strangers who had showed up with light and somehow used it to protect instead of burn. The live stream count ticked past 50,000. A hashtag formed in the corner of someone's screen, then was copied and pasted into 100 more. Let the kids. Be honest, it wasn't clever. It didn't need to be. It traveled. I exhaled and felt my shoulders drop an inch. I had spent years curling in, making myself small to fit other people's pictures. Tonight, my son stood up and the picture cracked. And when it cracked, sunlight from 100 cities ran through it and made the edges glow. Have you ever seen a lie try to outrun a signal? It can't. Not when the signal belongs to all of us. Have you ever felt a room wake up? Not just stir, but wake, the way an animal wakes when it remembers it has teeth. That's what the gym did after the live stream blew the doors off our little ceremony. The comments were still flying across 1,000 small screens, but the focus snapped back to the floor. You could feel it, an invisible pivot. From watching to acting. The LED screen held the last email like a lit fuse. Jaden stood near the podium, quiet, hands at his sides. Thomas gripped the microphone so hard his knuckles blanched. The principal's face said he wished time had a rewind button. And then somebody clapped. It was one sharp clap, so loud it cracked the air and startled even the band. Everyone turned. A dad in a sun-faded work jacket stood in the second section, face stern, eyes clear. He lifted his chin toward the stage and clapped again, slower, harder. Another parent rose, then 3, then a row. The sound multiplied, an avalanche started by a pebble. It wasn't applause for a trophy. It was a verdict knocking on the door. "Refund the money!" someone yelled. "Answer the emails!" another shouted. A mom near the aisle cupped her hands around her mouth. "Who is Community Athletics Booster LLC?" Her voice rang like a bell struck clean. Thomas lifted the mic, tried to paste on his coach voice, calm, commanding, a little disappointed in the team. "Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your passion, but this is—" "Answer the question," the treasurer said from the edge of the stage. She wasn't yelling, just stating the weather. "Who owns the LLC?" He opened his mouth. Words failed him on the threshold. That's the thing about silence. It can protect or indict, and tonight it did the latter. A teenager with a cast on his wrist pointed at the LED. "That's my fundraiser. I stood outside Kroger for 6 hours for those warm-ups." His voice shook, not with fear, but with fury finally given permission to exist. Have you ever watched anger choose dignity over chaos? It looks like people standing up one by one and refusing to sit back down. The principal tried to assert control. "Please, everyone, we need to maintain decorum. We'll investigate." "Investigate with our money?" a grandmother snapped, standing on careful knees, gripping her cane like a gavel. "You had the money already." A wave of and that's right rolled through the bleachers, the kind of choir you don't organize but you can't ignore. Near me, 2 boosters in matching shirts looked at each other, then at their phones, then at the stage. One said, "We need an audit." The other said, "Now." It spread as fast as any hashtag. "Audit now." Thomas swallowed. All expenditures were approved through proper channels. "Show the channels," a father said, calm as a cop. "On the screen." The AV kid looked at the principal. The principal looked at the treasurer. The treasurer nodded once. "Open the ledger," she said. A gasp went through the coaches. Thomas flinched like the word ledger had teeth. The LED switched to a spreadsheet, lines and numbers, dates, descriptions. The kind of quiet weapon only boring people understand until the boring becomes explosive. "Scroll," the treasurer said. The cursor slid. Time flattened into a list of decisions: travel stipends, hospitality, community outreach, hotel suites, appearance honorarium. A line marked Coach Appreciation Dinner landed like a slap. Another marked Equipment Delay Credit. A phrase so slippery the room hissed. "Who approved those?" a mom demanded. Silence. Then the faint feedback squeal of a mic too close to a speaker, pattern interrupt. Everyone winced, then focused harder. Jaden didn't move. He let the adults take the floor. His presence did something to the room, though. It kept the heat from tipping into fire. He was the proof that this wasn't a brawl. It was a reckoning. The treasurer stepped closer to the screen, reading like an accountant at dawn. These vendor names: Riverside Lodge, CA Booster Events. Who contracted them? She looked at Thomas. No spin left in her eyes, only math. He said, "We always seek the best value." A parent laughed. One sharp bark without humor. "Best value for who?" Have you ever felt truth get heavy enough that people can pick it up? It changes posture. It makes spines straighten. Phones were still recording, but fewer people were looking down now. The story didn't need the internet for a moment. It had a body and a voice and a pulse right here. A teacher cleared his throat. Soft-spoken, the kind of man who apologizes to chairs when he bumps them. "I've been asking for a new ball cart since November," he said. "I was told we had to wait for Q2. He looked at the ledger. "We didn't." The crowd murmured, hot and low. Thomas tried to pivot. "Let's remember what really matters. The boys' hard work, the values we—" "The values?" A mother in scrubs still spotted with a long shift shook her head. "You lectured a child's mother about a complete family while spending the children's money on—" She stopped, breath hitching with fury she refused to let turn into tears. "Sit down." It wasn't shouted. It was delivered the way you tell a dog to heel. For the first time all night, Thomas looked small. "Effective immediately," the treasurer said into the mic the principal handed her. "The coach is suspended pending a full audit." The room didn't explode, it exhaled. Relief and rage together, like a summer storm finally breaking after a day that hurt your skin. Then it did explode. Applause. Angry applause. Grateful applause. Crashed like surf. It shook the banners. It made the metal struts hum. People didn't just clap. They stood. They whistled. They stomped. Not out of joy. Out of enough. I felt my throat open and a sound leave me I didn't know I had. Not a scream, not a cheer. Something in between, made of 12 years of swallowing. My hands stung from clapping. I didn't stop. "Hand over the card," a dad called. Right now. The treasurer extended a palm. Thomas stared at it like it was a snake. "Your district card," she said steady, "and access to the shared drive. We'll be resetting credentials." He didn't move. The principal's face had gone from panic to policy. "Coach," he said softly, "the way you speak to someone you once respected and now must confront, give her the card." Thomas pulled his wallet with jerky fingers. The little rectangle, once power, now evidence, scraped against leather on the way out. He set it in the treasurer's hand. The gym watched like it had been waiting its whole life to see that gesture. "Keys to the equipment room," a booster added. "Please." Keys clinked. Metal, honest and heavy. He set those down, too. "Password to the team drive?" the treasurer asked. He hesitated. "It's..." His shoulders sagged. "Eastside 2024. He muttered, defeated enough to say the exclamation point like a period. A ripple of disbelieving laughter traveled the aisles. Have you ever seen authority shed its costume in real time? It leaves a man shivering in his regular clothes. Through it all, Jaden stayed still. Hands unclenched now, shoulders dropped a notch. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't gloating. He looked relieved. And tired in the way only the brave get tired. A group of players huddled near the court line, whispering. One stepped out, a skinny kid with acne and eyes like storm water. He raised a hand, half question, half declaration. "Do we still practice tomorrow?" The question was so ordinary it broke the room's fever for a beat. The principal answered, voice gentler than it had been all night. "You do, with Coach Ramirez, fundamentals, no speeches." The boys nodded. One said, "Good," like that was the best word in the language. Parents started lining up, not to fight, but to sign. The treasurer flipped to a blank page on a yellow legal pad. "Emails for the audit summary," she said. Pens appeared out of nowhere. People wrote with intent, not fury. Downstrokes steady, names legible, fury burns, intent builds. For a second. Just a second. I closed my eyes. I saw Jaden at 6, dragging a plastic chair across a kitchen floor so he could reach the counter and help me stir cake batter for his own birthday, because we couldn't afford a bakery cake. He had licked the spoon and laughed, frosting on his lip like a mustache. "We're a team," he'd said, that tiny voice full of a pride money can't buy. Tonight, our team had grown by a gym, Dana. My name floated to me on a friendly current. I opened my eyes. It was the grandmother with the cane. She'd made her way to our row. Her hand found mine. Warm, dry, certain. "You stand tall now. Do you hear me?" My lips trembled. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She gave my hand a squeeze that traveled all the way to my spine. "Because the world ain't the only thing watching, your boy is." I looked at Jaden. He wasn't watching me. He was watching the treasurer collect the card, the keys, the names. He was watching the adults be adults. Something settled in him. I could see it. A new weight added, the kind that strengthens instead of crushes. Across the aisle, a booster dad folded his arms and said to no one, "We'll need a parent committee." Someone else. "Transparency reports monthly." A teacher. "Student reps." The room started building the thing it had been told it already owned. Thomas tried to slip toward the side door. The principal stepped into his path, not dramatically, just enough. He said something low. I didn't catch the words, but I saw the shape of them. "You don't leave this way," phones tilted again, "not to chase him. To document the process. Document, don't destroy." The phrase from the live stream had rooted in the gym. Maya stood very still in the front row, a statue with breath. The diamond lights in her ears didn't sparkle now. They sat heavy, like frost at midnight. People weren't looking at her yet. That would come. Right now the story was bigger than any one face. The band, unsure what to do with their hands, started to pack up quietly. The cymbals whispered together, a soft apology for having been loud earlier. The blowers in the ceiling hummed like distant bees. In the doorway, Night pressed its cool cheek against the opening and listened. "Parents," the treasurer said, lifting the mic one more time. "Thank you. We'll send the first report within a week. Until then, no more purchases, no reimbursements, no travel payments go out without my signature and the principal's." She glanced at Jaden, then at me. "And thank you, Jaden, for asking us to look." He nodded, face flushing. The gym gave him a different kind of applause then, softer, lower, heavy with respect. Not the roar that greeted the suspension, the sound of adults saying, "We see you." Have you ever heard gratitude sound like a promise? It's quieter than you think, and bigger. The principal cleared his throat. "Coach Ramirez," he called, "please meet me in the office in 10 minutes. A woman in a faded team hoodie lifted a hand. The players whooped once, short and sincere. A new shape of hope sketched itself between rafters. I let myself breathe, lower, deeper. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the back row. I felt like part of a body that had finally chosen to stand. Does justice fix everything? Number. But it changes the air. And once you breathe that kind, you don't forget it. Parents began to talk in clusters, not gossiping, planning. Teens filmed less, hugged more. Someone passed around a stack of old team photos and said, "We'll make this program honest. The kids deserve that much." And for the first time that night, I wanted to go home, not to hide, to sleep like someone whose house had locked its doors and thrown out the spare key under the mat that thieves always know about. As I turned back toward the floor, Jaden caught my eye. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The gym was saying it for him. Have you ever watched someone you thought was made of glass finally admit they're human? Not in a dramatic faint, not in a scream, but in the quiet way a mirror cracks. Hairline first, then all at once. That's what happened to Maya. The gym had settled into that post-storm hum, voices low, papers passing, the treasurer collecting names, the principal speaking in policy. Phones still glowed, but the fever had dipped. For a minute, everyone was an adult again. And then I felt the temperature around the front row drop. The kind of cold you get from shock, not air conditioning. Maya was still standing where she'd been all night, a statue in sequins. But statues don't breathe. She did. Fast, shallow. One hand pressed flat against her stomach like she was trying to hold something inside that wanted out. The other hand kept reaching for her necklace, turning the pendant, releasing it, catching it, turning it again. It flashed and flashed like a distress signal no one was trained to see. "Sit," someone whispered to her. A teammate's mom, gentle, not unkind. "Honey, sit." Maya didn't seem to hear. Her eyes were on the LED screen, but not reading anymore. Staring. The way you stare at a road after the car stops moving. The words on the screen weren't words to her. They were noise. I told myself not to go. We're not close. Years of barbs had taught my feet to stay planted, but the body has older lessons than pride. Before I knew it, I'd taken a few steps down the bleachers. "Jaden," I said, keeping my voice level, "stay with Mrs. Torres." He nodded without looking away from the floor. His eyes were tracking Thomas and the treasurer like a hawk tracks line movement in a game. I climbed down the last set of steps and found myself near the court line. The polished wood held a smear of confetti from earlier. My sister's heels, silver, too high, looked wrong on a gym floor that had just hosted a reckoning. Maya. I said her name the way you say someone's name in a hospital. Carefully, like you're putting it back into their hands. Her head turned a fraction, not all the way. She had that look people get when they realize their face has been doing a job for years and it suddenly quits. The muscles around her mouth didn't know where to go. Her eyes shone but didn't spill. Not yet. "Don't," she said. It wasn't a warning, more like a wish. "Okay," I said. "I won't." We stood there like that, sisters with too many miles between us to count, while the gym breathed around us. Have you ever had a childhood memory creep up on you without asking permission? Mine did. A flash of a living room carpet in a house that doesn't exist anymore. Maya balancing a tiara from a dollar store on her head, me clapping because she asked me to, Mom laughing a little too loud. Later, Maya leaning in the pantry doorway, smirking at my hand-me-down sweater. At least I don't look poor. I swallowed the memory back like a hot thing. Tonight wasn't about old burns. It was about fresh wounds. "I didn't know," she whispered. It took me a second to realize she meant the photos, the hotel logs, the carousel from the anonymous account, the other life I had deliberately refused to imagine. "He said..." She shook her head, like the words were marbles she couldn't hold. "You saw the kids?" I nodded once. "Yes." Her throat moved. "They're... little." The last word was a thread. "Little," I echoed. She swallowed again, harder this time, and finally found my face. For the first time in years, she didn't look at me like a rival she needed to beat on points. She looked at me like a person she wanted to borrow a spine from. "What do I do?" The room seemed to tilt. I'd spent so many years asking myself that question quietly, alone in kitchens and cars and grocery aisles. Now the person who had taught me to be small was handing me a space to be big. I didn't want it. I took it anyway. "Breathe," I said. "Then sit." She obeyed the first, inhaling like it hurt. The second took longer. Her knees shook. When she finally sank into the front row chair, it sounded too loud, metal against wood, a small crash that made 3 people look over, pattern interrupt. The band stopped packing for a second and stared. The gym's buzz softened, like sound had to bend its head to pass by her. She put both hands on her lap. The sequins on her dress scratched her palms. I could see it in the way her fingers flexed. She stared at her hands like they were a test she hadn't studied for. "I believed him," she said, her voice thready but clear. "I wanted to believe him." "You loved him," I said, not a question. She made a wet, almost laughing sound. "I loved the story." Her eyes flicked to the rafters, chasing a banner that used to make sense. The coach, the speeches, the family photos, complete. The word broke right there in her mouth, cracked into 2 dull pieces. The gym noise thinned again, as if someone had dialed the treble down. A breeze? How does a gym have a breeze? Found us from the door and lifted a curl from her shoulder. In that light, in that soft movement, she didn't look like the girl who had once enjoyed watching me lose. She looked like a person being peeled by truth. "Maya," I said, careful, "this is going to get louder before it gets quiet." "I know," She blinked. The first tear didn't fall. It hung in the corner, stubborn. I hate him. She swallowed. I don't. I hate that I'm the last to know. That's a special kind of pain, I said. It makes everything else echo. Her mouth trembled. She pressed her lips together like a child trying not to cry at a recital. I said. She glanced up toward the rows where Jaden sat, then down. I said something ugly, didn't I? I didn't save her from it. You did. Her shoulders curled in, not dramatic, just a fold. I'm sorry. She said it like she hadn't practiced the word in a long time. I'm so sorry. Have you ever felt anger and kindness move through you at the same time, like two currents that finally braid? That's what it felt like. I didn't say, it's okay, it wasn't. But I let the apology land. It made a small dent in a wall that had been a fortress. From the stage, metal clinked, the treasurer dropping Thomas's keys into an envelope. The sound traveled straight and true, a punctuation mark to a sentence none of us had wanted to write. Maya flinched. The room did that strange slow motion thing you see in movies, but everyone in real life moved at full speed. Her eyes slowed, though. They found Thomas, then the side door, then the floor, then me again. Does everyone know? She asked. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about safety. She meant, do the kids on the screen know they're on it? Will the internet chew them up? People are trying to protect them, I said. Jaden asked. The streams are redacting. She closed her eyes. A quick squeeze, gratitude and grief pressed into one blink. Your son, she whispered. He did what none of us did. He did what I taught him to do, I said, surprising myself with the courage of it. Name the truth. Her eyes opened again. You taught him that? I taught him that I wouldn't lie about him to make someone else comfortable. The words came out cleaner than I'd expected, like they'd been waiting. That's not the same as being loud. It's being clear. Maya stared at me as if I'd spoken a language she understood but hadn't heard me use since we were kids. The second tear fell, then the third. She didn't wipe them. They made dark commas on the sequins and kept going. Mom will pick sides, she said softly, oddly practical. She always does. I know. She'll pick wrong at first. I know, I said again. She might pick right later. Maya made a small sound that might have been a laugh. You believe that? I believe in later, I said. We sat there in our tiny circle of quiet while the gym organized itself into committees and schedules and better futures. I could feel people glancing at us, guessing our lines in this play: villain, victim, witness. It's tempting to hand people labels when you're tired. But labels don't hold water. People do. Dana. My name, from Maya's mouth without thorns. I looked at her. You don't have to forgive me. She kept her eyes on her hands. I don't know if I would, if I were you. I took a breath. I don't know either. She nodded, like she respected that answer more than any polite lie. But if I ask you for help? Not now. Not with him. Later. With the kids. With me. The last word was the smallest. Would you? She stopped there. Pride still had a leash on her throat. I won't let the kids drown, I said. Yours, anyone's. Her shoulders shook once, a tremor she couldn't catch. She lowered her head, and the tears came in a silent rush. No sobbing, just water obeying gravity. The mascara didn't run. She'd bought the waterproof kind. We both knew why. Have you ever watched a person step off the stage of their life? The way their face looks when the lights leave and the muscles soften? That's what I saw. Maya's jaw unclenched. Her hands stopped pinching the pendant. She breathed like someone who'd just told the truth in a confessional with no door. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jaden move. Only an inch, readjusting in his seat, but the motion flashed a memory into my chest. Him at 3, patting my cheek when I cried quiet in the dark, whispering, "We're enough." Maybe enough expands. Maybe it makes room for latecomers. "Look at me," Maya whispered. It sounded like a plea and a dare. I looked. She did too. For the first time all night, our eyes met and stayed. No flinching, no shallow scans. Just two girls who had grown into women in different houses of the same family, finally admitting the roof was leaking. The gym noise blurred into a low tide. In that thinned sound, her face changed. Not pretty or ruined, just honest. She shook her head, a tiny movement that said, "I did this to you, and to me." "I'm sorry," she said again, and this time it wasn't a word. It was a surrender. I felt something in my chest loosen. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a slackening of a rope that had burned my palms for years. From the doorway, a draft carried a soft rattle, the rope of a banner tapping its pole. The band's snare drum ticked once as someone packed it away. A child laughed somewhere high up, released from hushed adults for half a second. These sounds layered like a lullaby only a gym can make after a war. "Come home with me," I almost said. I didn't. That's a bridge you don't throw into a river before you check the current. Instead I said, "Text me when you're safe." She nodded like someone accepting a life jacket she doesn't think she deserves. "I will." We sat another 10 seconds in that small new truth. Then she touched my wrist. Just 2 fingers, a thank you written in Morse code. And I knew. This was the moment Act 3 needed. Not vengeance, not victory dances. The first honest look. The first unarmed sentence. Have you ever felt a room go quiet in a way that isn't empty at all? It's the kind of quiet that means something has finally been heard. That's the quiet that fell between us. 2 sisters under the same roof of noise, finally choosing not to shout over each other. Have you ever felt a room change its mind about you while you're still standing in the same shoes? 1 minute, I was the woman in the back row, the cautionary tale with a scuffed bag and a polite smile. The next, the gym turned and faced my son. And when it did, something inside me stood up too. The crowd's fury didn't vanish. It pivoted. From punishment to praise. From what we'd lost to who had shown up, heads lifted, phones lowered. Even the metal rafters seemed to listen. The principal stepped forward, but he didn't speak first. He looked at Jaden, a small gesture, an invitation. Jaden didn't stride. He doesn't do swagger. He walked the way kids walk after a game they've played with their whole selves, calm, a little tired. Sure. He moved to center court. The LED behind him was still a window of receipts and contracts, but the focus wasn't pixels anymore. It was his voice. "Thank you for listening," he said. No victory lap, no speeches, just a sentence that landed like a hand offered, palm up, silence met him, the good kind. The kind that lets words soak instead of splash. Then a clap broke it. 1, 2, it spread. Not wild. Warm. Real. Players tapped their chests. Parents nodded. The sound built into something I had never heard directed at my family before. Respect. Have you ever realized your body has been bracing for years? My shoulders, my jaw, even the way I hold my breath. They all let go an inch. A teacher I only knew by hallway nods raised a hand. "Jaden," he called, voice steady, "you did the brave thing in the right way." Another teacher added, "You protected the kids." Words like bricks, laid one by one into a foundation I didn't know we had permission to stand on. A boy from JV broke into a grin he'd been holding back. "Bro, you saved our season," he blurted, then glanced at the principal like he'd sworn in church. The gym laughed, a clean, harmless sound, and the principal's mouth twitched into something human. The treasurer lifted the mic. Mo. For transparency, effective tonight, we'll publish the booster ledger weekly. She paused, then turned slightly to Jaden. We'll credit the student who asked us to look. It should have felt like a headline. It felt like air, like someone had cracked a high window in a stuffy room. Speech! A kid near the baseline yelled, because kids can't help themselves. Jaden shook his head. No speech. He looked around at faces he'd seen for years in bleachers and lines and pickup lanes. Just be kind to the other kids, and be honest with the money. He glanced at me, quick, almost shy. My mom says clarity is better than loud. People turned toward me the way they turned toward the person who handed the batter the bat. I wanted to vanish into the wooden slats. I didn't. I raised one hand and gave a small wave. The gym didn't cheer for me. It didn't need to. It acknowledged me, and sometimes that's bigger. Pattern interrupt. The band's snare snapped once, accidental, a stick hitting metal as someone packed up. It made everyone jump and laugh, which somehow made the respect land deeper. Tension broke. Trust slipped in behind it. Maya stood two rows down, eyes red but clear. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She clapped. Slow, deliberate, for her nephew. People near her followed, not out of politeness, but out of recognition. Whatever else was true, this was true too. Jaden had told the truth with his back straight and his heart open. Jaden. The principal's voice was careful now. Would you be willing to hand the mic to a parent representative? We want next steps in writing. Mrs. Torres, Jaden said immediately, turning to the teacher who'd watched him since elementary school. She blinked, surprised, then stood. She talked about an interim committee, student reps, receipts uploaded to a shared drive with permissions that didn't include a coach's private email. People murmured yes in a dozen different accents that all meant, we're done being quiet. And then something simple happened, and it changed me. A father in a faded team hoodie walked over to Jaden and held out his hand, not a fist bump, a handshake. Jaden took it, another parent, then a player. A chain of hands, quick, awkward, beautiful. You could watch respect cross the floor from palm to palm. Have you ever realized pride isn't a balloon in your chest? It's weight in your spine? That's how it felt. I stood taller because I had something to carry, and that something was my last name not whispering anymore. A girl from the pep squad raised her phone and asked, "Can we take a picture?" For the page, not to dunk. To say we did the right thing. Jaden blinked. Only if the caption says protect the kids? She nodded. Done. The kids gathered in a loose half circle. Not a hero shot, not a throne, a huddle. Jaden in the middle, but not above. Heads close, eyes shining, a few cheeks still wet, the photo clicked. For once, a moment wasn't staged to look perfect. It was allowed to be true. I felt a touch on my elbow, the grandmother with the cane. Come on, child, she said, guiding me down 2 steps. Stand where he can see you. I did. I stepped into a patch of light that had ignored me for years. Jaden glanced up, saw me there, and smiled. Not a big grin. The kind of smile you make when your shoulders finally remember they have a job other than holding your ears apart. Mom, he mouthed. I'm here, I mouthed back. Voiceover, mine, quiet, steady, cutting through my own past like a ribbon. Sometimes justice doesn't come from adults. Sometimes it comes from the kid who refuses to sit down when the room decides comfort is easier than truth. The treasurer made it official. Coaches suspended pending audit. Parent committee formed, funds frozen. New passwords by morning. Each phrase landed like a nail in a frame that would hold. The gym applauded between each one, not like fans, but like builders who know the sound of a house being set straight. And then the unexpected kindness I will remember when I am 80. A teacher I'd argued with about a late assignment once. Tight bun, tighter standards, stepped close and said, "Dana, you raised a good man." She handed me a tissue with a smile that didn't condescend. "That matters more than trophies." My throat closed. I managed, "Thank you, clear, not loud." A boy who'd rolled his eyes at my cheap snacks on away game days shuffled up and stammered, "Ms. D, your brownies slap." A laugh hit my ribs so fast it turned into a cough. "I'll make more," I said. "Promises can be small and still holy." The principal found his footing. Policies are his language. Tonight, he learned ours. "To the students," he said, "thank you for your courage. To the parents, thank you for your trust. To Jaden—" He stopped, as if the next words wanted to be right, not polished. "Thank you for telling the truth when it was heavy." People nodded. Heavy is the exact weight. The gym began to loosen. Bags zipped, jackets found, committees exchanged numbers. The treasurer guarded an envelope like it was a crown jewel. But when movement started toward the doors, there was no scattering shame. There was orbit. Small clumps formed around Jaden. Kids asked him if he was okay. He shrugged like teenagers do, but said, "Yeah," in a way that told them yes, but also ask each other too. I felt the old reflex twitch, the one that tells you to leave first, to avoid the stare, the whisper. But there were no whispers. Only the low drift of planning, of people who used to walk past each other now stopping to trade names. A boy from varsity, quiet, broad-shouldered, the kind who leads without noise, stepped onto the court. He lifted his chin at his teammates, then at Jaden, and began a slow clap. Not the angry verdict clap from earlier, a lean-in clap. A "you are one of us" clap. The players joined, then the parents. A circle of sound, tight and bright. Have you ever heard applause that wasn't about winning, but about becoming? That's what it was. It asked nothing. It returned something that had been stolen. Dignity. I felt heat in my eyes and didn't look away. Pride doesn't hide. It stands in the aisle and takes the music. Jaden ducked his head, embarrassed, then lifted it. He scanned the bleachers like he was pinning this to memory. The banners, the faces, the ugly fluorescent lights that had finally lit the right things. He found me again, and for once I didn't check the floor or my hands. I let him see me receiving the world as his mother, not as someone apologizing for being one. "Have you ever thought you were the punchline?" I said into the mic when someone pushed it toward me. "And then realized you were the setup for the truth?" The line came out of nowhere. It also came from everywhere. Laughter rippled. Kind. Surprised. I wasn't supposed to talk. I did anyway. "Thank you for seeing my son." "Thank him," a parent called back, smiling. "He helped us see ourselves." The scoreboard overhead still showed numbers from the last game. Home 54, visitors 52, a tight win. It felt like a joke the building had forgotten to update. Tonight's score was different. Not neat, not final, but new. As people drifted toward the doors, more hands found us. A coach from another sport, a custodian who'd kept the floors gleaming and the trash cans from tipping. A kid I didn't recognize, a freshman maybe, who said, "My mom's single too. Tell your son thanks." Then he ran off like he'd said a secret. Have you ever watched a label peel off without ripping? Single mother, it didn't vanish. It just stopped being a warning label and became a fact among others, like brown eyes or good at pancakes or gets loud at games. I gathered our things, my bag, Jaden's old hoodie he refuses to throw out because it smells like gym and cinnamon, and when I straightened, the grandmother with the cane was in front of me again. "Walk out proud," she said. "Don't let the night steal what the night gave back." "I won't," I said, and I knew, to the marrow, that I meant it. We turned toward the doors. As we passed the scorer's table, the treasurer pressed a business card into my hand. "For when the noise comes back," she said, "because it will, call me Practical Hope. The only kind I trust. At the threshold, cool air on hot skin. The parking lot lights hummed like big, friendly insects. Somewhere, a siren threaded the dark and kept going. Life outside was still messy. It always would be. But inside me, a room had been cleaned. The chairs were back in place. The window was open. Jaden bumped my shoulder with his. "You okay?" "Better question," I said, smiling. "Are you okay?" He grinned. "Yeah, hungry." "Of course. Kids save a gym and then want pizza." That's the world I want to live in. I looked back one last time. Through the glass doors, I could still see the court, the committee exchanging numbers, Maya seated with two mothers who weren't letting her be alone, the principal leaning on the stage like a man who'd finally learned how to stand somewhere new, from shame to pride. It didn't happen with a single speech or a perfect photo. It happened the way a sunrise does, line by line, detail by detail, until the light is everywhere, and you wonder how you ever thought the dark was permanent. Have you ever walked out of a building and felt the night air say, "You're different now"? Not because the street changed, not because the stars rearranged themselves, but because something inside you slid into its right place. That's how the parking lot felt when the gym doors shut behind us. The lights buzzed. The asphalt held the day's heat like a secret. Jaden swung our car keys on one finger, not cocky, loose, relieved. We didn't rush. The crowd spilled out in waves, parents, kids, the treasurer hugging her envelope like a baby, voices low, purposeful, no gossip, plans. I used to leave places fast, duck the hallway, be first to the exit. Tonight I walked like the ground belonged to me. Not all of it. Just enough to stand on without apologizing. "Pizza?" Jaden asked. "In a minute," I said. I wanted quiet first, 1 minute of it, the kind you can swallow and keep. We leaned against the car, breath met air. My phone vibrated. 3 messages from numbers I didn't know. "Proud of him? We've got your back." "Audit link goes up tonight." I put the phone face down on the hood. I didn't need proof. I had what mattered. My son, the sky, a night that didn't feel like a hallway anymore. Have you ever replayed the worst things someone said to you and realized it doesn't fit your shape now? At least my family is complete. The sentence tries to open the old door. It doesn't. The lock changed. I changed it. A breeze lifted the edge of Jaden's hoodie. He watched the doors like he was guarding them, then relaxed when he saw Maya step out between 2 moms. No spectacle, no swarm. Just 3 women walking like people do when they're not ready to go home, but they know they have to. Maya saw us and paused. Her eyes asked for something small. Permission, maybe. I gave it with a nod. "Later. We'll try later." The principal crossed the lot, stopped a respectful distance away. "Dana," he said, voice sanded down from policy to person, "thank you for your patience. Not for drama, not for silence, for patience. Naming it matters." He turned to Jaden. "And thank you for being clear." He didn't say brave again. Brave had been used up by the gym. Clear was the word that would last. We got in the car. I started the engine. The radio came on mid-chorus, a song Jaden likes because it sounds like a sunrise trying to remember it's also a siren. I turned it down to a hum and pulled out slow. The school shrank in the rear view until the banners were just color, until the doors were just rectangles of light, until the night took it back. At the first red light, Jaden said, "Was I too much?" There it was. The question kids who tell the truth ask when the room finally listens. "You were exactly right," I said. "You were careful. You protected people. You didn't humiliate. You didn't lie." He nodded, then made a face. "I sounded corny." "You sounded like a leader," I said, which is always a little corny to people who haven't tried it. I smiled. "Get used to it." He laughed. The honest kind that starts in the chest. The light turned green. We rolled forward into an ordinary street that looked brand new. Flashback. Quick, Clean. Him at 9, holding a cardboard sign at a fundraiser car wash. Letters wobbling, but message steady. Team needs new nets, sun on his nose, soap in his shoes. Later, him counting singles on the kitchen table, eyes bright because pennies meant nets and nets meant shots that didn't slip through old holes. Tonight said those pennies mattered. That truth matters more. We parked by a pizza place that smells like melted Friday nights. The bell over the door chimed. The kid at the counter wore a name tag that said Gabe and an expression that said, "I've heard everything." He hadn't heard tonight. No one had. That's the grace of ordinary places. They let you be new without asking why. We split a soda. Jaden demolished 2 slices with the joy only teenagers and longshoremen know. I ate slower, not from nerves, from gratitude. My hands didn't shake. My jaw didn't clench. The hum of the cooler and the clink of plates and the little scratch of a pen on a receipt. These sounds used to make me feel like life was happening to other people. Tonight they were mine too. "Mom," Jaden said. "Yeah?" "If Coach tries to talk to me online." "He won't," I said, and then caught myself. "But if he does, we block and report, we screenshot, we don't engage. Clarity, not loud." "Okay." He wiped his hands, then went quiet in the way he does when he's building a thought he cares about. "I didn't do it to get a moment," he said. "I did it so the money stops leaking." "I know," I said. "And so the kids stop being used as decorations?" He grinned. "That too." We drove home under a sky that was the color of forgiveness if forgiveness had a color. Our apartment is small, neat, stubborn about staying within its means. The porch light worked for once. I'd fixed it with a YouTube tutorial and a prayer. Inside, the air held the day without trapping it. Shoes in a line by the door. A note to myself on the fridge. Pay field trip fee. A magnet from a thrift store beach I hope to take him to in real life. Jaden headed for the shower, music thumping low through the bathroom door. I stood in the kitchen and realized I was breathing like people in commercials breathe. Slow, happy, sold on something true. I opened the window. Night came in. The neighbor's dog sighed like an old aunt. Somewhere, a train stitched the town together with a sound you can feel in your ribs. On the table, my laptop waited. I flipped it open. The school district site had a new banner, Interim Athletic Finance Committee, Community Update. The treasurer had already posted the first steps. A Google form for questions. A statement about privacy, a promise of weekly reports. The comments, miracle of miracles, were civil. We were learning in real time how to be a community instead of a crowd. My inbox blinked. Subject: Thank you. The sender was a name I didn't recognize. My daughter's on JV. She asked me tonight what courage looks like. I showed her your son. I put a hand over my mouth for a second, not to stop a cry, just to ground a moment that might float away if I didn't touch it. Have you ever realized the story you thought would stain you has become the story that steadies you? That's the shift. Shame to pride, pride to purpose, purpose to peace. Jaden came out with wet hair and clean eyes. We made tea like we do when the day has teeth. He dunked a cookie with the seriousness of a scientist. We didn't debrief the whole night. We didn't need to. We named the next small thing. Email his English teacher about the missed homework, charge the phone, set the alarm, pack gym shoes. Justice is a rhythm, not a climax. Before bed, I stood at the sink and let the water run warm. I remembered a different kitchen, a different sink, a different me. Counting tips, calculating gas, whispering, "We're okay" to a sleeping boy because I needed to hear it out loud. Tonight I didn't whisper. I said it clear. "We're okay." The room took the words and didn't argue. In the mirror, I looked like myself. Not the good light version. The true light version, the lines are mine, the mouth is mine. The eyes look like a woman who knows where her edges are and doesn't apologize for having them. I crawled into bed and did something I haven't done in years. I texted my mother without bracing for impact. We're safe. Audit started. Jaden is okay. 3 dots. Then none. A minute later, I'm coming by tomorrow. I stared at the screen, felt the old wince, then set the phone down. We'll deal with tomorrow. Boundaries are doors, not walls. They open and close on purpose. Sleep met me easy, not heavy, kind. Morning came with the dumb, holy noises of a world that insists on continuing. A truck backing up, a kettle sighing, a neighbor laughing at something I want to hear later. Jaden ate cereal out of a mixing bowl because teenagers think portion sizes are optional. He grabbed his backpack and paused at the door. "Hey," he said. "You're coming to practice? With Coach Ramirez?" "Yes," he smiled. "She's good. No speeches." "Perfect," I said. "We've had enough speeches." He left. The door clicked. The apartment held his absence like a hand holds a coin, aware, warm. I sat with my tea and opened my laptop one more time. Cursor blinking in a blank document. Title, Tell Me Your Story. Because here's the part I promised you, the part where I ask you to step out of the bleachers. Maybe you're a parent who's been told your family is less because it doesn't look like a brochure. Maybe you're a kid who saw something wrong and wondered if you're allowed to say it out loud. Maybe you're the one who said the ugly thing and you want to learn a different mouth. This is your turn. Tell me the truth you're carrying. Not the loud version, the clear one. Write 2 lines in the comments. What you faced and 1 boundary you set or want to set. If you can name it, we can help you hold it. If you can't name it yet, say that. You're not alone in the not yet. Pattern interrupt. One last question, straight to you. Have you ever considered that the person you need permission from is you? That tonight, or this morning, or on a Tuesday nobody will remember, you can be the one who says, enough, and then sits down and breathes? I'm not offering a miracle. I'm offering a practice. Clarity over loud. Boundaries over performance. Community over crowd. We'll keep you posted on the audit. We'll keep receipts visible and kids invisible to the internet's teeth. We'll keep choosing the kind of quiet that means people were heard. And we'll keep showing up in gyms and car lines and pizza places like the world belongs to us too. Because it does. If you've ever felt like the guest in your own family, if you've been seated in the last row of your life, hear me. Truth will not make you famous. It will make you free. And once you've felt that, once the night air has said, you're different now, you won't trade it back for anybody's applause. Drop your story below, or just drop 1 word you didn't have yesterday. Clear, boundary, enough, home. I'll be here reading, learning your names, saving seats in the front row, because sometimes justice starts with a crowd. But freedom? Freedom starts with one person telling the truth and another person saying, I hear you.